We have two special guests with us, Gary Hawkins and Shekar who do a lot of great work in our industry. They're thought leaders, and they're also pragmatists and practitioners as well.
When you think about personalization, there's really four drivers of effectiveness here. There's the quantity and the quality of the data that you're working with. So, are you capturing purchase data on 10% of your sales, 50% of your sales? Or are you a company like a Weiss Markets, like a Cobrans, like a Kroger that's capturing 85, 90, 95% of your total sales back to customers? The next thing that's going to impact effectiveness is the size of the offer pool you're using. Is it just, the couple hundred items that are on sale? Is it a few hundred items in a specially created offer pool that you're trying to get funded by vendors? Or are you going to use all the products in your store and make them available? There's the sophistication of the strategy and the algorithms used, and then there's the breadth of customer engagement, right? If you're offering even the world's best personalization and strategy and everything, but you're only touching 5% of your shoppers, you're not going to have a massive impact. But if you're offering powerful personalization and you're able to engage and touch 50% or 75% of your shoppers, you're going to have a significant impact on your business, your revenue, and your bottom line.
So the question is, where is retail going, right? So clearly, last 100 years, a lot of it has dependent on what you do in the store, customer service, your store layout, the experience, the assortment, the pricing. But what we've seen in the last 20 years is that there's a lot of things happening under the surface, so to say, right? So understanding your customer behavior, doing the personalization, the data analytics, and hyper-targeted campaigns, which are invisible to your competition, right? So it's impossible for your competition to really know how you're leveraging this data, because most of this communication that's happening is going direct to the consumer. It's not being published on your website. It's not being sent in some flyers that's accessible publicly. It's happening typically directly in direct contact with the customer through either a mobile app or email or SMS or what have you, right? So clearly the direction that retail is going in is this whole what's submerged right under this big iceberg. And the question is, how do you get to that point? How do you get to the point where you're starting to use some of these technologies to drive your business? Fundamentally, there's a lot of data that's sitting on your end, whether it's loyalty data or product nutrition data or pricing or purchase data or inventory data, that can be processed in a way where you can understand every shopper's behavior to a great degree.
This is really, and very interesting stuff on the one hand. On the other hand, it's a little bit scary because, I think it lays out the challenge that's ahead of us. I think a lot of people look at these, this information, and you think about data, you think about artificial intelligence and so forth. When I look at this information, I'm thinking about relationships. That's the term that comes to mind. And when I work with retailers, and I ask independent retailers especially, and I ask them, well, what makes you different from other retailers in the community? And invariably an answer comes back something like, well, we know our customers better. We're closer to our customers than the next guy. And I think what's interesting is you guys have laid out the way that is going to happen in the future, that we're using artificial intelligence to power our human intelligence to further relationships. So these are tools that are best used really in the hands of independent retailers, not just the big guys. I want to open it up to questions in a second. I do want to share with you one thing. This is what we know. And this is a little bit of a challenge. I hope you'll agree. When we ask customers, shoppers across the country, if they feel their primary store shows that it values you as a customer, these are the results we get. These are not great results for us as an industry. We're only 31% strongly agree with that statement, and basically the same amount disagree with that statement to some extent. Right? People just don't feel as if their store values them personally as a customer. Again, that relationship thing. One good example, one good reason is that when we ask if emails and texts from their primary store, they feel like they're curated or targeted them to them personally. In other words, it takes into account them and their behavior and relationship with the store. Look at these results. Like less than half agree to any extent, and more than half fully disagree with that statement to some extent. So this is where that's in front of us. And what I think Gary and Shekar are doing are laying out both the foundation and groundwork, and then some specific tools that we should be, when I'm talking about us on this call, independent retailers, interdependent retailers we should be all over this, because this is Kroger's already doing it. The big guys are already doing this. Amazon's already mining this data. This is the stuff that when we say we know our customers better, I guess my challenge would be, well, prove it. Show me that you know your customers better, and in what ways are you keeping up with other stores in how well you know your customers. That's sort of the way I look at it. Harold, what strikes you in this conversation?
Three questions that I have, or three things. Number one, the number of dollars we're leaving on the table when you talk about vendor money, we customize a program for them, giving the top tier, the top two tiers, and they come up with this money. Where do the dabblers get this money? Where do we make up this money that they're given, the disciples are given, to help promote their events and promote their programs? Are we making it up on some other bucket of money that's out here, or are we missing out completely?
So, Harold, really good question. And what I see happening at that disciple level, and again, one of the clear differentiators here, the disciples versus the devotees and the dabblers, is those disciples have taken the responsibility for funding all those personalized discounts. They are not dependent upon their vendors or CPGs for that money, right? And while they can seem scary at first, especially the retailers that have spent their careers, relying on vendor-funded deals to drive their advertising and marketing, drive their business, these retailers that are doing this are getting just a huge ROI. Now, there's no simple answer to this, because you've got some retailers, probably most of the retailers I think with us today are buying through a wholesaler. That limits somewhat their flexibility. I'll make the comment that larger retailers that are buying directly, that are disciples, are pushing everything to an everyday low cost rather than promotional monies. They're pushing everything to an everyday low cost, opening up their margin a little bit, and then they're spending that extra margin how they want, which is back through these personalized campaigns, getting a big return for it. If you're an independent retailer, you're working through a wholesaler, and again, this is something I did years ago as a retailer, I would look to your TPRs, right? Those TPRs are flowing almost automatically through the system. They're, either off invoice or however they're structured. But think of the potential to redirect some of that money. So Kellogg's is giving you, 50 cents a unit on a TPR for the next 4 weeks. Maybe instead of just passing through all 50 cents, you pass through 25 cents available to anyone at the shelf. But then you're going to give a sweeter deal to shoppers that product is really important to. So think about how you can begin to shift some of the discount dollars that you're getting today around a little bit. Think how you can utilize your private label products that typically offer you a better margin. Think how you can use some of the fresh products, store-made products, that type of thing.
Is there a minimum number of stores that I have to really become a devotee or a disciple?
I don't really think so. I think it's more dependent on your data discipline, more than the number of stores. So if you have a few stores and you have a good handle on your data, I think you can do this. So I saw some questions in the chat, Doug. I don't know if I should respond to them, but I think
Yeah. In fact, actually,
No, we're at time now, and
Yeah.
I wanted to introduce you to the new segment why we put you at this time. I'd love to know a name of a retailer who you consider a disciple before I go, though. Would you please give me a name of someone, 10 stores or so, that is a disciple in your category?
well, I can't say it's 10 stores or not, but I can tell you, like, one of our customers is Weiss Markets, who's definitely a disciple. They are doing personalization at a huge scale, where they run these programs for hundreds and thousands of shoppers on a weekly basis with almost no manual intervention. Great question. I think that's definitely something on a lot of retailers' minds. So the solution that Bird's Eye has is a completely cloud-hosted solution. So there is no dependency on technology internally. The only thing that we are looking for is customer identified data. So the Bird's Eye platform itself just takes data feeds. So your T-logs, any other information that you have when your customer comes in, FTP'd into our system. That's it. There is no other requirement for any integration beyond that point. All the analysis is happening on the Bird's Eye platform. So from an integration standpoint, extremely light. We work with 10, 15 store chains all the way to 200 store chains, and the integration doesn't change. Okay, it's just data feeds coming in. So I think people have that concern about, do we have the tech for something like this? Well, the tech is not, it's not dependent on you. It's like, if you use Gmail, where you don't have to host the email server, you're logging into some website. So it's much the same with the Bird's Eye platform. I mean, I'll take the first pick of this and Gary can fill in. So I think, if you work with a third-party data provider like an Experian or, things like Epsilon Data, or there are multiple data providers out there, we certainly can integrate all of that data in. Again, what you need to understand is from your end, there is no technology requirement. It's just data feeds coming into our system. We augment the customer information with that. And, in fact, we even work with Doug, right? So when survey data coming from retail feedback, feedback group can be integrated back into this to understand, customer sentiment and attach that to the entire personalization journey, right? So that's, Gary, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is when, as a retailer, you're thinking of the data, it takes to power this up. First and foremost, it's customer identified purchase data, right? So that customer identifying themselves to that transaction. The second place would be your product data and having as much product attribute data as you can. There's companies out there like Label Insight, Syndigo, Spins, and others that are able to provide a lot of other attributes for the different products you sell. Whether it contains nuts, so it's not good for someone with a nut allergy, it's sugar-free, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't have that data yourself, many times your wholesaler or the different distributors you work with can provide that data. Beyond that, those are really the two things I would concentrate on because there are things you've got today and you can simply grow. Things like other digital data, social media, and so on, that can come over time. The two things I'd focus on right now, customer identified data and then product attribute data.
I actually think people are starting to expect it, as opposed to the creep factor, right? So I think if somebody has been interacting with you for months, if not years, I think they're more thinking about the technologies there. Why don't you start sending me communication that's going to simplify my journey? And I think where it gets creepy is if you're starting to poke around and suggest stuff to them that is outside of their interaction with you, right? So I think anything based off of purchase data and your direct interaction with a retailer. It's like, if you told me that you don't like almonds and you kept coming to my home and I kept giving you almonds, I think you'd get frustrated at some point and you'd expect me to use that basic information to serve you back. So no, we have not really gotten any feedback around that. I think in fact, people like relevance, and I think relevance, the beauty of relevance is if you do it well, it feels like nothing is happening. It feels frictionless and it feels like it's part of the flow.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you turned that around into the concept of relevance, right? As opposed to the concept of creepiness. Like I don't know. I shop at a whole bunch of stores. I've been gluten free. I have celiac disease. I've been gluten free for 15, 20 years. And if somebody is still sending me, one of my stores is still sending me coupons for a package of imported pasta, it really kind of pisses me off at this point. Like how many transactions do you need from me to tell you that I haven't bought anything with gluten in it for 20 years? So it's almost, it's weird because that's my expectation just because of how the world works these days, right?
Good analogy.
Yeah. And Doug, I would add to what Shekar said. I completely agree with Shekar. This is absolutely becoming an expectation on the part of your shoppers. Think about, you've got to expand your view of competition today from just the store down the street, right? You're competing with Amazon. Amazon has more data than probably anyone on earth today about each and every one of us. And they use that data. Every time you go to Amazon.com, what you are being presented with is being driven by your past purchases, by things you've browsed, things you've looked for, so on and so forth. Companies like Kroger have had this data. Kroger's had this data for 20 years and is a master at using this data. Other companies, even someone like Walmart, is going down this path as fast as they can go of capturing data that they can attribute back to that shopper to better understand them.
My wife mentioned the word cruise at dinner last night, and within 45 minutes, I got a Norwegian ad on her and my phone. I mean, if you call that creepy, you get rid of your phone because it's happening to you all the time, and if you don't know it, it's happening. I mean that's creepy or relevant. I mean, holy man, look at that. The Norwegian got a sale. Let's go.
I do want to, in terms of so one of the leaders in this group, fantastic organization and really smart guy, is Gene Crowley. And Gene, I think you mentioned in the chat, whether it's private or to everyone, that you guys are in fact doing some of this stuff. What kinds of things are you doing?
Correct. We've got a loyalty program that has an app, and we're doing weekly offers to our membership. We've got 153,000 members. We look at, right now, we haven't segmented yet the customers, but we're going to look at our best customers down. We're going to segment it to about 5 segments. And then we're also looking at employees. We're going to do an employee only offers. So we're just getting into that, and hopefully in the new year, we'll be up to that stage. When we look at it, at ID'd sales, we've got average basket size in ID'd sales. That's somebody that's used the app. We also have a card at about $45.10. The non-app users or non-members are down to $28.
Wow.
So you just see the difference that
Huge.
this loyalty really does. And now, to make a point, or to the point of creepiness and all that, is we found we have 2 different banners. We've got Buy Low Foods, which is a low price offering, and then we have a Nestor's Market, which is more high end. Well, if we put Coke on and send it to everybody on all our memberships, we get more comments back from our Nestor's customers and say, don't send me these items. I don't use these items. So that we get more of that negative part than somebody saying, oh, this is creepy.
We think about how Netflix is structured, right? Like, to me, I don't know. If they paid attention to the few people that were concerned about creepiness, they wouldn't be, at the level they're at right now. Right now, if I go into some random hotel room and I put in my ID into Netflix, it knows what I've been watching, what I might want to watch next, and it's, and then the guy who's staying in the room the next night, when he logs in, it's serving up that information. And when my daughter logs in, it's serving up something totally different than it did to me. To me, that is the essence of a relationship right there. That's where it's going. If we think we are somehow superior to the stores down the street because we are closer in terms of relationships, we're more closely connected to our customers. And I think there are a lot of independent retailers who are of that mindset, you know, these are the ways I think that that's going to operationalize in the future.
It's a brilliant question because, you know, it's like, you know, electric cars of the future, and are you going to learn how to charge them and operate them? Well, you don't have a choice, number one. And number two, what I would suggest is the time commitment that's actually involved in getting down this path is way less than you actually think it is. Because once you have the data feeds in place, most of the work is being done by the platform. What you do have to change, however, is your thinking in terms of how you think about your business. You want to start thinking about it in a customer-centric fashion as opposed to category and product fashion, right? So that's really the big change that you have to make in terms of thinking. Once you do that, everything else is a natural progression, right? You're going to want to know about your customers. You want to understand how they behave, how they change. And I think that's, to me, the biggest thing. So it's more than a time commitment. It's more a mental switch commitment that you have to make, in my opinion. The second thing I would say is if you don't have a loyalty program, but you do have online sales, you can do a lot. You can start building lookalike audiences based on your online baskets, right? So you can look at baskets and say, hey, people who put this in the basket, I see other people in my store who buy the same thing in their basket, and start doing some lookalike audiences. There's certainly things that you can do. But however, I think what you'll realize is that maybe your online business is, I don't know, 5, 7, 10, if you're lucky, % of your business. It's just not a big enough sample for you to start impacting the rest of the store. So you really want to think about some kind of loyalty program to identify shoppers at checkout, whether it's a digital coupon program you introduce where they're incentivized to identify themselves. It doesn't have to be a full-fledged loyalty program, but I want you to start thinking about where you can go and how you can get started on that journey there.
Yeah, and added to that, measure that, right? So, you know, companies that are leaders in this space are including on their weekly sales reporting, management reporting, what percentage of their sales and transactions they identified back to customers each week, right? They're measuring the number of unique customers or customer households shopping each week, not just the number of transactions they have. They're measuring a rolling retention rate, how well they're hanging on to their customers, right? So think about embedding customer-based metrics into your management reporting.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I would say here is, you know, we need about 18 months to really do a good job to start with. 18 months of shopper history, because you really want year-over-year comparisons to see how your shoppers have done. But, you know, you get started where you can, right? So this is one of those things where, you know, there is no right time. You just have to start doing it, and you just keep improving steadily. But, you know, the cost and the complexity is way less than you imagine. We're happy to, you know, set up a demo to kind of walk you through that process. But we've onboarded everybody from a 10-store chain to a 200-store plus chain with all kinds of huge IT departments. So I don't think that's a worry. That's really what we're here for. We take the pain out of the technology integration effort.
Great. I'm gonna turn it over to Harold to take it out from here. But we will tomorrow, guys. If anyone's interested in that, we'll make sure that we get them your contact information and give them a way to get back in touch with you.